This week, we are going to work on the second part of our responsive web design lecture, and we are going to be covering CSS Grid. In previous weeks, we covered Grid View, also called Float, and we covered Flexbox. So this is the third responsive layout that we are covering in this course. The web-based readings all deal with CSS Grid because there are several different ways to implement this layout. And the lecture demo goes through quite a few of the different techniques you can use when you are using CSS Grid. So we first talk about kind of the terminology in CSS Grid and how the pages are laid out, basically in columns and rows. Then we talk about kind of implementing what I consider to be a simple grid, where you either lay things out in columns or in rows. And then we get into some of the CSS that you need to use when you are working with CSS Grid. And then as we move through the lecture demo, of course, there are links out for you to try everything, but we do get into some more complex features of CSS Grid. You'll notice that as far as aligning content within cells, the commands are very similar to Flexbox. Okay, so you have justify content, space around, space between. So these should look somewhat familiar. We can also align vertically. And so here is the CSS for that. And there's links out for you guys to try it. We can set up the gap between columns or rows. Okay, and the commands for all of these are bold-faced, so you can kind of see where they are in the little block of CSS code. We get into how to merge columns and rows. So if you're going to create a layout with columns or rows, chances are you're going to want to combine and the columns or rows so you can create different types of layouts. And that does require merging. And there are a couple different ways to merge. So that is all explained, the different techniques that you can use to merge and kind of examples of what these layouts would look like. And then finally, at the bottom, this is how I use CSS Grid. It is by basically creating a grid template. So you have to create classes and define a grid area. So basically each area that you want to display content in, you define as a grid area. And this template technique works best if you kind of jot down on paper how you want your page to look. Okay. It's not as easy to use on the fly if you don't pre-plan. That you have to pre-plan your page and your layout. And so this is just an example of different areas in a page. We've got classes and grid areas defined. Once you do that, then you can create your grid container, tell it that you are displaying a grid, and then you basically take these grid areas and you lay them out on the page. Okay? And you'll put the classes in your HTML. And that's how you're connecting your HTML to this layout. And this works really slick. It's absolutely my favorite layout. It works really well for mobile. and for regular desktop layouts. Okay. And so if you're going to do mobile, you're probably going to have to do media queries to basically adjust that template for different screen sizes. So this kind of shows you how you would go about doing that. And then I've got quite a few examples of this layout. Okay, so here's an example. Then I have a showing you here what the code is that I used. And if you scroll down far enough, you can actually see the grid areas and how I set up that layout. Okay, and then I've got a grid column example. This is that inspiration page. The only difference here is that I've laid it out in grid columns. Okay, so kind of same content, a little different layout. Okay, and then here is a grid column. So this doesn't use the templates, it uses the columns. Okay, and then how do you do printer-friendly pages using CSS Grid? And then I've included links to the printer-friendly page from the 3 examples. Okay, so lots of information on CSS Grid. It is a very, very powerful responsive layout. Once you go through all of that, you are ready for the textbook assignment. And in the textbook assignment, you are going to be using the CSS Grid layout, but you're also going to be reviewing all of the responsive layouts that we did this semester. And there are videos for every single task. And the first task is you're going to convert a website into a responsive grid. So I've got a kind of a fun, well, I think it's fun, a fun Dr. Seuss page that you're going to download. And these are graphics that will show you what each of the different devices, how your page should look on those. Okay, so this is a graphic. Keep that in mind. It's a bunch of screenshots that I kind of had to paste together for the mobile grid. You can see the desktop looks a little bit different. Here's the desktop, excuse me, and this is actually the tablet. Okay, so you can see I don't have quite as many graphics up there. And then when we were looking at mobile, there weren't any. Okay, so when you create this example, yours is going to look the same way, or it should, okay, if you've done it correctly. So you're going to follow through the examples, and the text that you need to add is highlighted. And then I even show you how this is going to look in your HTML. So these are the modifications that you need to make in order to connect to your grid. Okay, and so once you're done with this, then you're going to move on. And this is a little review. You are going to download the zipped folder, and it contains 3 different pages, and the pages all look the same. If you view each one in the browser, they're all going to look the same. But what you're going to be doing is opening the Flexbox page and converting it into Flexbox. You're going to open up Grid View, and you're going to use the Grid View layout there, and you're going to open up CSS Grid and apply a grid layout to that. And so there are instructions that walk you through, at least this section is walking you through Flexbox. Okay, and then this section is going to walk you through changes for grid view. And then this last section is going to walk you through the changes for CSS grid. And you can see for my grid areas, I kind of abbreviated them and made them short. If you don't like that, you can make the names different. Okay, it does not matter to me what you name those. Totally up to you. I kind of like the short abbreviated names. But you can see that we've got a kind of a default little grid container, and then I have a mobile grid container here as well. And for this to work, you do need to go into your HTML and you have to add those classes to the HTML. That is what connects them to the grid areas that are in the template. Okay? And so that is the assignment. You'll be doing two CSS grid pages. You'll be doing a Flexbox page and you'll be doing a grid view page. And once you're done with that, you're going to transfer it all to the web, submit done to the Dropbox, and move on to the lab assignment. Whoops, wrong button. So the lab assignment involves creating a CSS grid page. This page can be used as a basis for your final project. You can use this page or the grid view page that you created in part one. Okay, and so I've got lots of examples here for you to look at. And then I've listed the minimal requirements. And if you want to take the content from your part one lab assignment, and kind of reconfigure it for CSS Grid, that's fine. Okay, you'll notice that my examples do the same thing. Okay, so here's kind of my reconfigured version of my inspiration page. And you'll notice that the monster flip page, those pages I reconfigured as well. Okay, so feel free to reconfigure existing content, or if you want to come up with something new, that's fine too. Okay, so this has got all of your requirements. You are going to need screen and print CSS for this. And so you can kind of go through all of those requirements, incorporate that into your page. Okay, and I did include the Seuss CSS in here. You certainly could use that as a model for your page, okay, or any of the other assignments pages. So if you wanted to use the review, that CSS grid review page as a model, you could do that as well. Okay, and then after you're done, you're going to add your links to the assignment page and then get everything transferred. And this is how you will be graded. Okay, and once you are done, you will go ahead and submit done to the Dropbox and move on to the discussion forum, which lets you showcase your responsive page. So you can pick either the CSS grid or the grid view page to showcase and share with your classmates. Okay, so what you need to do is post a link to your CSS grid or grid view responsive page, and then below the link, explain who the audience is, what the purpose of the page is, and how did you decide on the design and layout? Why did you group the elements together that you did? And then why did you pick the color scheme or graphics that you displayed on your page? Okay, so answer those questions, then review the other students' posts and indicate what you liked about their page. Okay, and you need to review at least one and reply to it. Okay, so that is the discussion forum. Okay, the only other thing that we have this week is an instructor check-in. And this is very similar to what we did in previous weeks. I like doing it this week because then if you do have any questions, you can ask in person or via email or by submitting to, this Dropbox. And what I want to know is there anything that we've covered in lessons 1 through 11 that you are confused about? Okay. I'd also like to know what part of the course has been the most challenging for you and if there's anything I can do to make it any easier. Okay. And so you can come to any of my live stream office hours. You don't need appointments. You can just go into the home section, okay, and click on the live stream link. That'll take you right into my live stream office hours. Right? So no appointment needed. You can also choose to respond by clicking text here and typing in the response or by emailing me, okay? Whatever is the most convenient for you. And that is what we are covering this week. For the final project, I've got directions here and a checklist that I actually use when I'm scoring. Okay, so the directions and the checklist are kind of duplicates of each other. So, if you like a little bit more verbose instructions, you can go through this. And so there's a video that goes with this too. But it kind of goes through all of the things that you need to do, kind of breaks down how you're going to get points. Okay. And then the checklist is a little bit more succinct version. You can actually print this out and then check off or scratch off the different requirements as you meet them. And you will notice that an awful lot of these requirements are in the lesson 11 lab assignments, which is why I'm allowing you to use those as a foundation for your term project. There are a couple of things you will need to add in, okay, but it will make completing this final project a little easier. Okay, so that is what we're working on this week. I do know it's a lot, so if you run into problems or if you have any questions, please let me know. And I do love working with CSS Grid, so I hope you guys find it fun and interesting as much as I do.